and welcome to Money Stories, a podcast where we interview fellow Catholics and Christians so we can all learn from their personal money stories. I'm Caitlin Cano, a wife, mom, financial counselor, and student of all things stewardship.
Hi there, I'm Diana, and I am a fourth grade teacher, a children's book author, and I am a young adult parish missionary. And we're excited to be here together today, talking about some awesome money stuff.
Yeah, so Diana, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I just finished my summer school classes. I'm teaching a little bit of summer school to fourth and fifth graders at my school. And today was actually really cool. We had this guy named Cesar the llama, like an actual llama, come on, and it was super weird, but it was super cool. The llama's like, I guess, super famous, and he was super cuddly and cute. Obviously, it was all through Zoom, but it was something totally different that we would have never normally done had it just not been all virtual. So it was a really cool experience for us.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, these experiences that we would have had
otherwise, right?
Otherwise. And I was telling you earlier, but I just came back from my first time going to Mass again since March. Here in Nevada, we are on strict, still phase 2, only 50 people at Mass at a time. And I went to Mass and it was the most amazing thing. And earlier this week, I got my hair done for the first time since March, which was crazy. It was getting a little bit unruly. And I was talking with my hairstylist, who's just phenomenal. And so she's a hairstylist and her husband is an entertainer because we're in Nevada and that's what people do. And she was saying that as they're going through COVID, if someone had told her prior to COVID that they were going to go 3.5 months with no income, she said she would have sworn they would have been on the streets. They would have been homeless and not been able to survive. But she was saying as she went through and was having these, moments with her family, they were really getting in touch with their needs versus their wants and making decisions that, really kind of focused on family and family time and saving money and not things that you normally would have thought of as fun. So I was just got me thinking about the lessons we could take from COVID. I don't know if your students have taught you anything or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my students have taught me a lot of things. It's so interesting. It's same thing. Like if you would have told me that I would have been, well, thank God I didn't lose my job, but more than my students teaching me things about during COVID, one of the things that they taught me is just the beauty of community and actually being together and getting together and how much as humans we really do crave that. I'm a person that loves my alone time and I live alone and I love living alone. But even in that, like I missed being able to be in front of my students and just like hug them or handshake them, or we do like hugs and handshakes and high fives, and just being in community is so important. It's a huge part of our faith, but just part of being a human being. Like you need people around you. So I really was surprised how much I missed them. It was crazy how much I missed these little 10-year-olds that I teach. But yeah, I mean, it made me kind of reevaluate and be so grateful that I didn't lose my job and that I have this beautiful job where I'm able to be around children, which are like the most beautiful thing in the world is children. So it's just I learned to be very grateful for a lot of things during this time.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's as a parent, we appreciate our teachers at a whole new level now.
Yeah, for real, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And really the best things in life are free, especially when you have the little ones that they don't need crazy trips to, amusement parks, even though those are fun once in a while, or going shopping all the time as a recreational activity. It's these little special moments with them that I think we're going to take forward with this COVID lessons and hopefully just realize that really the best things are free and they're just such little blessings, these little moments of sweetness, and hopefully we can remember them. And it really have been. And yeah, just move forward, kind of learning lessons from the hard stuff, but also taking the good stuff and not forgetting that going forward. But yeah, awesome. Well,
for sure.
Yeah. And today we have a wonderful guest. We're really looking forward to having him. His name is Aaron. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on up. All right. Hi, welcome, Aaron.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
Good. So Aaron is the author of Dollars and Saints blog. If you have not read it yet, we're going to put that link in our notes so you can go ahead and check it out. John and Evelyn, our founders, found Aaron's blog, I don't know how weeks ago or something, months ago, and really good stuff on there. It was really impressive and very well thought out and really from a faith-based perspective, which we appreciated. And so we reached out to Aaron and had a conversation and realized he's in the world of cybersecurity. So he agreed to come on and talk with us about his career and how he's able to see a vocation within his career, but also about some cybersecurity tips because we are all online constantly these days. And I'm sure we're exposing ourselves in a whole new way that we're not, really taking into account. So we appreciate you being here and talking about those topics.
Sure, sure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So can you tell us about your career in cybersecurity? So what does a normal day look like to you?
Sure. So I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. So that makes me the Director of Cybersecurity. Um, Really, my overall role is to manage cyber risk, if you will, at the university. As far as an overall day, it can be, I would say, it can be very routine at times, and other days it can be very non-routine if we have an incident or if we have um, um, a potential hack attempt or a successful hack attempt. So that can certainly, um, yeah, it can certainly make the day non-routine. But in general, I would say I really try to take a disciplined approach when it comes to practicing cybersecurity at the university. So every day I have my schedule very much marked out where I address given projects and try to make incremental progress on those projects.
Yeah, and so you have this career in tech, and you also, it's very obvious to me through your blog that you really value your faith, and you have kind of interesting faith journey story that he had shared with us during our meeting. I don't know how much you want to share in this
Sure.
podcast. It's up to you. But I'm curious how, because I know there's a lot of us who have these jobs in tech and these different jobs where it's hard to see how our faith integrates with these jobs. And I feel like you've done a beautiful job of realizing that association and then using it within your career. So can you tell us about that, how you came to that conclusion and how you use that to grow?
Sure. I think as far as my faith background, I grew up, I would say, culturally Catholic, but then I wasn't confirmed until I was 27. And thankfully, I had an RCA teacher who was just a tremendous teacher and just very much got to the heart of the faith, to the foundation of the faith, and was able to, I would say, light a fire within me. And so in that period, there came a period of discernment when it came to the religious life. And then even further, there were, some of the more existential questions that were raised as far as, I think the questions that we all have to face, at some point, what am I doing here? And so whenever you take that question and apply it to your profession, um, it begs the question, how am I helping the kingdom? What am I doing to grow the kingdom? Or am I growing the kingdom here in my current career, my current position? And so, I think with my current role, it really, initially when I stepped into cybersecurity about, goodness, 10 years ago, yeah, I had to really stew on that question as far as, how am I helping the kingdom versus somebody like Diana, who is a teacher, or you as a mom, there's a very tangible element to growing the kingdom there. So in cybersecurity, I really had to dive into that and realize that, okay, I do have my place in the kingdom. I have my place in the body of Christ, and I'm functioning as this one piece. And it's an important piece. All of our pieces are important. So in that way, I think understanding that, also engaging in the Young Catholic Professionals organization, that really helped me to understand the dignity of the work that I do have.
And can you tell us a little bit more about Young Catholic Professionals for those who aren't familiar?
Sure, yeah. It's an organization that was founded, I believe, in 2010 by a young lady named Jennifer Ball, founded in Dallas, Texas. And so the mission of YCP is to help young adults understand how to work and witness for Christ. And they have, I would say, twice a month meetings where they'll have an executive come and speak. They'll have a once a month networking happy hour. And so I think through that organization, I really learned to appreciate the dignity in work.
All right. Well, just talking with the same thing that we're talking about there, what is some of the most common questions that you get from people who are coming to seek your advice and your services? Like, what's something that most people seem to be asking you that is not common knowledge to the lay people who are not in cybersecurity?
This is a great question. I think it really made me wonder if anything. Honestly, probably the approach I see the most is maybe a lack of questions and more of an apathy, and understanding that you're being taken care of by default. And financial institutions and your banks, for instance, they do have a good level of security there, but there's certainly more the typical person can do. And so, for instance, I know with my mom and dad, they're extremely cautious, which, as a child I did not like, but now as an adult who, tends to, watch, who cares about his parents a lot and his family a lot. I love that. I love that. I can trust my dad to be, very skeptical. I love it. At the same time, I still encourage them to, to adopt some best practices. And so I do have some advice and guidance I try to give them.
That's great. I'm glad that I feel the same way about my parents. Some things that they told me as a child, I'm like, really? Like, you're so old, you don't know what we're talking about now as an adult. I'm like, oh, I see now. You make a lot more sense that I'm on the other side of things. So thanks for that. I appreciate your answer.
And Aaron, what do your parents do that you now realize was brilliant, that they've been doing to protect themselves? And are there steps that they take on a daily basis to protect themselves that you now use? Or are there things that they do that's actually detrimental to their cybersecurity that can hurt them in the long run?
I think, one step, one step they've taken is a step that I really encourage, my peers and the various stakeholders at the university to take, is that of a healthy level of questioning and skepticism. So, for instance, if you receive a phone call or an email that's unsolicited, especially one if it conveys a extreme sense of urgency, i.e., get back to me now, I need to talk to you now, or your account's compromised, please do this. It's important to pause and to realize, okay, where is this coming from? It says, this person indicates indicate they're with the bank or with, an investment firm. It's great to pause and to really, ask the question, are they really from that investment firm or from that bank? And so I think with my parents, one thing I'm really grateful for is whenever they do receive the phone calls, like we all do, from scammers, they, typically hang up, and or have enough, sense about them to question the origin of this and whether they should follow. And even further, they understand that, okay, the initiation should take place from them to the bank, from them to the investment firm, if you will, when it comes to transferring sensitive personal information, rather than having somebody call me from supposedly the IRS and, oh yes, I'll give you my social security number. Yeah.
Do you see that a lot?
It happens a lot. I have a relative who received a phone call supposedly from Microsoft, indicating their wireless network was broken, or the computer was broken. And so, a $300 credit card transaction later, plus allowing them to connect to the computer, after a couple hours, they realized this doesn't seem very legitimate. And
wow.
So what happens? And even at work, we receive plenty of calls, plenty of scam emails. I mean, it's a daily issue, and some days it can be very heavy. Just a lot of volume, just malicious emails.
That's so crazy.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. And when you're in the moment, though, I imagine someone who's maybe a little bit older and not as tech savvy, if you get an urgent phone call, that might spike your adrenaline, and then you're not in the best state of mind to make a healthy decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think one common technique that you see now, I received one of these emails recently, was receiving an email with your, a password. If you typically use passwords across given websites, many of these have been compromised. Well, I received an email with my password, a commonly used password in the subject line. And so you see it in your first thoughts, oh my password's out. And so, yeah, your initial reaction is to respond, to do something quickly, but it's often in your best interest to slow down and to pause, step away, and give it some thought.
So I'm sure in your position, you're dealing with people who are trying to take advantage of others through email, through phone, through text, or whatever means they can do. And you're probably seeing a lot of the bad in the world and people trying to take advantage of others. So what things do you do in your career and in your daily job to keep you focused on the kingdom of God, keep you reminded that you're in this helping people and for the greater good? Because I'd imagine it can be a heavy position, right? As you're dealing with people who are maybe clicked on the wrong email and now the entire department they're working with is compromised. So can you tell me how you resolve that within your career?
Sure. Yeah. I think, thankfully, it's been a blessing that I'm able to, even during a stressful day, I'm able to walk away from it in the evening. I love working out. I love to run. I love working out. And so that's certainly an outlet. I think it's a blessing from the Lord to be able to walk away and to enter into that, to relax and to let it go. I think too, I understand how much effort my team spends, the university spends with cybersecurity. At the same time, I realize, we all make mistakes, and I I very well may make a mistake before too long that might compromise one of my cybersecurity rules, if you will, and so it happens, and so having that the understanding helps to alleviate some of that stress, and just knowing that I tend to believe that most people are doing their best and trying to do their best. And so that tends to, take some of that edge off. I think as far as, seeing the light of the kingdom and trying to understand the positive, I try to pursue for me, relatively disciplined approach to life when it comes to a practice of, for instance, in the morning, I try to wake up, have coffee, have a shower, and then get into prayer and stay away from social media, in the morning, stay away from TV, and really focus on, trying to order my life in such a way that, in the same way that I want to live it. So if my faith truly is my priority, then I try to make my prayer one of the first things I go to. And so I spend time there. I think it's incredibly important to practice gratitude daily and frequently. So I start my prayer with that, and that certainly helps to orient my mind from, the negative, if it is in a negative place, to something positive. And we're tremendously blessed. I'm tremendously blessed, and focusing on that goodness, it helps me to stay in a positive place. I think further, having some accountability with my spiritual director, who prior to the pandemic I was meeting with monthly. Having accountability with a coach who I speak with twice a week. She helps me to stay accountable to my goals, my priorities, my ideals. And so I think, all of that, of course, during the workday, I try to stay on a schedule when it comes to addressing priorities. And then after work, I really, focus on stepping away, getting into my workout. And then, I think I would say the discipline helps me to try to stay on the right track.
Yeah, and I love the word that you chose, which is discipline, because discipline, and disciple essentially means to be learning in a structured way, right? So it's not that you're getting stuck in a routine or you're, doing the same thing every day. It's organizing yourself so you're moving forward, right?
Mhm.
And doing it as a disciple, which is the same word as discipline. I don't know. I just think that's an interesting choice of word there. So I appreciate that. So that's awesome.
From what you were saying, one of the things that I gathered is that it seems like you're really a steward for the Lord, which seems to be a common thing. I know Caitlin and I have spoken about stewardship, and the Bible study talks a lot about stewardship as what we're called to be. We're called to be stewards of everything that we have here on earth, and it seems like you do a really good job of being a steward in all aspects of your life, and that's super awesome. So just great job on that. I think we need to make sure we encourage each other throughout our days. I just was curious about how you are bringing all of that together in your blog. I'm not sure how much you want to share about that. I know it's part of what you do, and it's part of a little bit of it seems more like a hobby, not so much part of your job. It's something you do on the side, but it is called Dollars and Saints. And I was looking through it, and there's some really good stuff on there. So just kind of like where was that inspiration for that, and why, where, when, how did that come about? It just seems super awesome that you're doing that for us. So thanks.
Sure. Yeah. I think, I've said a few times to multiple people that if my career wasn't in cybersecurity, that I would love a career in finance. I find it just a fascinating field. I love the depth in finance. I think I've probably said this before, but I think with finance, it's fascinating in that there's such a mathematical component, but probably even more so there's a behavioral and emotional component, to finance and money. where, yeah, I find that whole, just that paradigm extremely interesting. I would say as far as a foundation, probably, after I graduated from college, my brother taught my sister and I some good money management habits, and then I would dive into it and then, pull the thread more and more, if you will. I think I would say maybe a catalyzing moment or catalyzing event that helped me to start the blog was, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I don't know if y'all remember the civil war in the Sudan in the late 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe. But one of the really interesting points I found about that civil war was that on the one hand you had a dictator, Omar al-Bashir, I believe was his name, persecuting a given people, and you had most of the governments in the world putting in place an embargo on the country, so basically effectively cutting them off economically. But one of the streams of money into this country was a company called PetroChina. So China's nationalized oil company was looking for oil and gas in Sudan and paying money to the dictatorial government. And so that, I found that thread interesting. You pull the thread further, and then you realize that many of the mutual funds and index funds that Americans invest in through their 401ks and IRAs are invested in PetroChina through the index funds. And so it might be a fraction of a dollar, a fraction of a penny even of the money we're investing, but some of that was going through a given Vanguard fund. I remember seeing, and Vanguard's one of the giants in the index fund industry. So there were pennies of that money going through Vanguard to PetroChina, indirectly supporting this dictator. And so I found that, really a moral dilemma where, on the one hand, you're trying to fund your investments, your retirement, but on the other hand, on the other side of the world, you're supporting, and I take ownership of this. I was supporting, this dictator indirectly. And so, long story short, I think I found that the tie between morality and money to be fascinating. And I saw maybe a lack of depth, on the internet when it came to these topics, and I wanted to explore that, pull that thread a little bit more. So I think that was maybe a catalyst for me, and certainly it was definitely more of a hobby before. I'm spending more time with the blog lately, and really enjoying it. So I'm hoping to do a little bit more with it here in the near future.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for putting that together, honestly, because I went on there and you could have fooled me. I thought for sure you had finance background and that was like a side job that you had to do, because it's super detailed. But what I really like about it is that it's language, it's easy to understand. So you don't use like any kind of like fancy terminology where the layperson couldn't read it and get it. So it's super awesome. So if listeners haven't checked it out, it's Dollars and Saints, and it's super informative, but really easy to read. And if you have the time to get through it, it's very helpful information on there. So thanks so much for having that out there for us, Aaron. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
You gave me a good idea for an episode coming up, talking about some ethical investing, because that is a field now that's growing. People are becoming more aware about where their money's going, especially now that index funds have exploded.
Right.
So many people are just indexing and letting it go for years, which is a great thing when it comes to investing for your own retirement, usually. But also we need to be aware about who we're supporting, and is the companies we're supporting, are they in line with the teachings of the Catholic Church, and are we growing God's kingdom with our money here on earth? So that's a really good point. All right, so keeping with the theme of the episode, which is your career in cybersecurity and how it's used to grow the kingdom, and cybersecurity ties into finances perfectly, because if you have ID theft, if you have your information gets out there, this could be something that impacts you financially for years. So do you have any tips you want to share with our audience, things they can do, changes they could make to help them with their cybersecurity, which will for sure impact their financial lives?
Sure. Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier that I think being proactive with your cybersecurity it's a good step to take for sure. Using the metaphor of home security, one of the things we do at our homes is that we keep our doors locked, keep lots of light and visibility around the home to try to minimize, physical impact or minimize the appearance of being low-hanging fruit, of being an easy target. And so I think in the same way with cybersecurity, I encourage people to take some, I would say, relatively easy steps. So I think, one step would be to keep your computer, so your Windows computer, your Mac, your phones, your internet browsers, keep them updated. That right there will eliminate so many threats, so many vulnerabilities. Of course, the challenge is updates come out continually. So, I would encourage people, like I encourage my mom and dad Sunday night to try to update, monthly, and to spend that time doing it. And so, yeah, I think that's a relatively easy first step. I think another good step is to keep backups of your data. So if you have, especially sensitive data or investment data, anything you really value, if you have it on your computer, keep it on an external hard drive, or use an online backup company like Carbonite, or Crash Plan, I believe, is another one. There are many varieties, but make sure you back up your data. I think the protection there is that if your computer were to crash, which all of them are eventually going to, they're going to, there's end of life to them. They may die, and they may crash, and so you want your data to be safe. Also, if your computer gets infected, and we're seeing a rash of this, in business, if your computer is infected, sometimes the criminals will basically make your data inaccessible unless you pay them effectively a ransom. And so, having data backed up will provide you an out. And there have been many businesses. If you Google ransomware, you'll see many businesses, municipalities that have had to pay up. And for every one of those, I'm guessing there's 2 that pay the ransom and don't go to the media to try to avoid being media. So back up your data. I think
me and Diana, our eyes blew up with that. I didn't know that.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Wow. 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 So how much do they usually pay out? Do they disclose that information? Is this
Sometimes they do, and it varies. I think, if it's the criminals are pretty sharp. Sometimes they will target, an organization, and they know the organization will have more money. So, I'm not sure what they would charge. Like, for instance, me or you, it might be, first of all, you'll pay in cryptocurrency, so that way,
Oh, so it's not trackable.
Exactly. And so it might be $1,000, $2,000. But businesses, some of them have been held ransom for hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions. And so if you look up the city of Atlanta or city of Baltimore, one of them was held, their data was held ransom. In certain cases, they'll pay the criminals to get access to that data because sometimes it's just business critical information. And other times, in the case of Atlanta, the leadership may be, very stalwart and just say, no, I'm not paying you. And so they'll play.
Wow.
So it's very interesting scenario that can play out.
Wow. Yeah, those are some great tips. I know I need to start doing some of that stuff. The updating my stuff monthly is something that I always think about, and then I never do it. But that's a really good reminder to get that done. And I think you had 4 or 5 really detailed tips on your blog as well. Did you not have a whole blog about that? Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote about it. There's a few more points. I know one point, something we're doing at the university, and something that I encourage my parents to do, is whenever you log into your bank or your investment account, make sure you enable what's called multi-factor authentication. So basically that means when you log into your bank, not only do you enter your password, but it's going to detect your phone, or an app on your phone is this really you. And so the good part about this is it no longer means that you're a stolen password away from having a hacker or a scammer enter your bank account, your investment account. Now it's that much more difficult to get to your money. And so, again, this isn't foolproof. This doesn't make you, invincible by any means, but it certainly means you're no longer the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
And it, prevents you from being an easy target.
Yeah. Definitely a little bit harder to get to our stuff, which is the idea, right?
Right.
So you are very lucky. We're going to try something out. We're trying something called a money hot seat. So basically, we just want to hear a short little story, a little anecdote, maybe of maybe a mistake or something that you did that was not so perfect, either in your case with cybersecurity, or were just maybe money-wise, like a purchase you made or an investment that you did that was really awesome with the idea, and then when it fell through, it was not so great. So we're calling it Money Hot Seat, and you're actually our first guest to do our Money Hot Seat. So we're excited to hear your story.
Yeah, so I think the first instance that comes to mind is in college. I think there may be a law now against it, or colleges no longer support it, but when I was in college, some credit card companies would set up shop in the middle of the common area, the quad, if you will.
The free
And I remember-
T-shirts. Do you remember those?
Yeah. And I signed up for, I don't know how many credit cards, 3 or 5 for a free T-shirt, thinking
wow.
that I was pulling the wool over their eyes, getting a free T-shirt out of it. Yeah, and so I know it's ridiculous. And so, afterwards, once I, left college and realized, oh, there's this thing called a credit report. I have, 3 or 5 or however many credit lines open for credit cards. Yeah, I realized, okay, that wasn't harmless by any means. And, I did not win that one, and so I had to go back and close several of those credit cards, and yeah, just to clean things up and not have so many credit lines open.
Oh, wow. Well, hopefully
Yeah.
it wasn't too big of a mistake, but at least you got some free shirts, right? Like, it wasn't total loss.
Yeah, I remember afterwards thinking the shirts were pretty crummy and not wearing them. So
You didn't want a reminder of that day anymore.
no.
Oh man, well, thanks for sharing that story. I'm sure you're not the first or the last to make that mistake. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Erin. We appreciate you being here, and that was really interesting. And you had some really great takeaway tips for our listeners. And also, I think it's just really important for everyone to think about how their job, whatever they do on a daily basis, can be used to serve the Lord. It does not matter what you do.
Yeah.
Do it to serve the Lord. And there's some really great quotes. There's one I was reading yesterday from Martin Luther King. I need to go look it up, and I'll post it in the description. But it was talking about, even a street sweeper. If you're going to sweep the streets, do that to serve the Lord. So, and this quote goes on. It was the most beautiful thing. But it doesn't matter what you do. We are here to grow His kingdom, to serve Him, and we just appreciate you being here and sharing the insight, because even today, just being on the podcast, you have served Him by providing this insight to someone who may have not have thought of these things. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here.
Sure, yeah. Thank y'all for hosting, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Erin.
For more information about Compass Catholic Ministries, including the various Bible studies and services that we offer, please visit compasscatholic.org. If you enjoy Money Stories, please share it with a friend. You may also like Compass Catholic's other podcast, Manage Your Money God's Way, available wherever you get your podcast. If you have any comments about today's show or suggestions for future shows, please email us at info@compasscatholic.org. Thanks for listening, and God bless.